Coming in at number 10, we have Anakin's father. If we pod race all the way back to episode 1, we will have a key moment in the building of Darth Vader. There's a moment where Anakin's mother says that Anakin was born without a father. Now, most people just see this as the deadbeat dad scenario and that the little boy's dad walked out on him at a young age. Man, think about how many lives that dad could have saved if he wasn't a dirtbag. Well, some people think that there's another answer to this question, that Anakin's father didn't exist at all. Once we get down the line in the Star Wars movies, there's a moment where Palpatine is talking to Anakin and he tells him about Darth Plagueis, who could create life. Some fans have thought that when Anakin's mom said that Anakin didn't have a father, it was literal and Darth Plagueis made him from scratch like your mom's best homemade apple pie. That would explain why he went to the dark side. Half of it was daddy issues and the other half was he was created by someone who was pure evil. That makes so much more sense now.
In at number 9, we have the Clumsy Stormtrooper from Star Wars A New Hope. This is one of my absolute favourite Star Wars bloopers and it's very well known, which is why it's not sort of further down in the list. So as they're walking through a door, stormtroopers, they're storming, they're trooping, but one of them bangs his head and looks like a little bit of a fool. In later editions of this episode, there was even a clunk sound added to make it look like it wasn't a mistake, but it absolutely definitely was. In at number 8, we have R2-D2 changing colour on the X-Wing. R2-D2 is one of my favourite characters in Star Wars. He's iconic, he's blue and white. That is, until he sits on top of the X-Wing as Luke is trying to destroy the Death Star in Star Wars A New Hope. Now this is because the effects team were using a blue screen, thus rendering the blue parts of R2-D2's costume completely invisible. They had to key this out, making him look black and white. Should've gone green, guys, should've gone green. In at number 7, we have a Dissapearing Stormtrooper from Star Wars A New Hope. As Obi-Wan and Luke attempt to enter the Mos Eisley spaceport, they must trick stormtroopers by using the Force on them, allowing them to enter. Now in one shot we see a stormtrooper clearly standing behind these guys. In the next shot, boom, he's gone. Where did he go? Was it Force magic? I don't think so. So from Disappearing Stormtroopers, we have Disappearing Gloves. In at number 6, we have the case of the missing gloves in Return of the Jedi. Now during the Battle of Tatooine, we see Lando sporting a pair of snazzy gloves. I think he probably loves those gloves, they're very nice. Unfortunately, Lando comes into trouble. He's dangled right over the mouth of the Sarlacc pit monster. Han rescues him, but when he pops back up, his gloves are gone. Weird. Do we think he had time to take them off and feed them to the pit monster? Perhaps they're still being digested now. However, I just think this is a little bit of a mistake. In at number 5, we have Love miraculously making jackets appear in The Empire Strikes Back. Love is a fickle thing. When done right, it absolutely has the power to remove clothes, but when it is able to add them in the blink of an eye, I mean, whoa. As Leia confesses her love to Han, he is wearing a plain white shirt. She says those 3 little words, the camera then pans to Han, who is suddenly wearing a jacket. I mean, where did that come from? Later, as he is being lowered into the carbonite freezer, the jacket is gone again. Strange. More jacket-based madness in at number 4 as Luke's jacket appears and disappears in A New Hope. Back at Luke's house in Tatooine, Obi-Wan and Luke discuss the Force. Obi-Wan shows Luke a lightsaber. It's all going well, they're chatting Jedi. But look in the background, there's a jacket hanging on the wall, but oh wait, it's gone. Maybe disappearing clothing is like a popular side effect of the Force, seeing as it happens so often? I don't know. In at number 3 of the top 10 biggest Star Wars mistakes, we have Jar Jar Binks. That's right. In at number 2, we have Luke's mysteriously moving mouth from The Empire Strikes Back. As Luke ventures to Dagobah to undergo the training of Yoda, he says a line without his mouth ever moving. Now this is weird. He says the line, he doesn't even exist. However, one can clearly see that his lips are not moving.
All I gotta do is find this Yoda. If he even exists.
Now there's one reason for this. This line was later dubbed in on request of George Lucas. However, it was a completely different actor that said it. So not only did Luke never say it, He literally never said it. Okay guys, so we have reached the big one in the top 10 biggest mistakes in Star Wars. We've had all kinds of crazy things, but what do we think is the biggest mistake made on the editing floor? What got into the film? What was the biggest mistake? I will tell you right now. At number 1, it is Obi-Wan's lightsaber plug visible in A New Hope. Now I think this is a pretty crucial error. The Obi-Wan vs Darth Vader duel is one of the most important fights in Star Wars. The student becomes the master, and it looks like the balance of the Force is about to be thrown off as Darth looks to overpower Obi-Wan. Now this is the first time that we properly see a lightsaber battle, so we would have thought that they would have put a lot of emphasis into making this flawless. Unfortunately it isn't, because look up Obi-Wan's sleeve, you can clearly see the power cord running down. It's like, oh, hey Darth Vader, let's have a battle, but wait, let me just charge my light. Yeah, oh, we're ready.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have Darth Jar Jar. This is perhaps one of the most famous and strangest Star Wars theories out there. Jar Jar Binks has traditionally been seen as a bit of a comic relief character in Star Wars, a gimmick for the kids to help contrast the story's darker narrative. This theory says you got it all wrong. Jar Jar Binks was actually a master of the Force, specifically the dark side. Jar Jar appears to have physical skills that we'd normally associate with Force users, effortlessly leaping and swimming around at will. During a battle scene, we see Jar Jar destroy a tank and a number of droids in what looks like a lucky goof. Now believers in this theory say there's no such thing as luck, that all of the goofing around is just a ploy to hide his true self from those around him. Just like Palpatine, he proves himself to be a powerful orator when in front of the Senate. Some say he was actually using mind control on them. The theory says that Jar Jar is essentially the dark side version of Yoda, someone who seems like a bubbling strange creature on the outside, but is actually one of the most powerful Force users in the galaxy.
Coming in at number 9, we have George Lucas planned 12 movies. There was a long period of time where Star Wars fans were screaming for more movies. Well, now you got them. Are you happy? More than half of them are bad, and the best ones were made several decades ago. Be careful what you wish for. But part of the reason why Star Wars fans were so adamant about getting more screen time was because there was a rumor floating around that George Lucas had originally planned for an epic to span over 12 movies. Now after a little digging, it can be revealed that that simply isn't true. There's an interview with him on 60 Minutes where he says there is no episode 7 because there is no more story. And since episode 7 was just episode 4 again, and 8 and 9 were both mega mediocre, then I would have to say this guy was right. Coming in at number 8, we have the evil Millennium Falcon. What if the Millennium Falcon had a mind of its own, like those werecars in that episode of Futurama where they try to kill people? That's a very, 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 very small reference that I don't think anyone will understand. And what if the Millennium Falcon was hellbent on making sure that the entire cast of Star Wars died a horrible death? Well, it would have done a pretty terrible job because most of them are alive, and Carrie Fisher, rest her beautiful soul, died after a long successful career. Well, calling this point the evil Millennium Falcon is a little bit of a stretch, but here's the rumor that was floating around. Apparently when The Force Awakens was being shot, Harrison Ford had his ankle snapped by the door of the Millennium Falcon. This thing swung open and then landed on his leg, leaving him hobbled like the story in The Last Jedi. That movie was stinky. But that was just the story that the internet ran with without doing any sort of fact check. It turns out that Harrison Ford actually got his ankle caught in a garage door, and that's what hobbled him. So the Falcon lives another day to be a force only for good. Coming in at number 7, we have car crash and WAMPA attacks. This is an urban legend that I have heard again and again. Now, while shooting The Empire Strikes Back, the wonderful lead Mark Hamill was in a pretty serious car accident and received a blow to the face that left him with a fractured cheekbone and looking pretty beat up. So people have said that the WAMPA attack at the beginning of the movie was to make an excuse for the facial scars that Luke had, but apparently that is all a myth. George Lucas has said that the attack was already planned. He figured that the scarring on Luke Skywalker's face could have been explained simply from a previous battle with the Empire. Coming in at number 6, we have Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die. Apparently Harrison Ford has never liked playing Han Solo, and that probably made the character even better, since for the whole movie he's a stubborn hard ass who doesn't want to hear anything ranting about the weird whisperings of the Force, it would only make his character better if Harrison was actually frustrated throughout the whole movie. There are rumors that Harrison was hoping that his character would get killed off even after they finished production of Empire Strikes Back. Part of the reason why Han Solo gets frozen in carbonite is apparently because no one could convince Harrison Ford to sign on for another movie. Eventually he said yes, of course, but here's another rumor that says the only reason he came back on for The Force Awakens was because he made it mandatory for his character to get killed off so he could never be asked to come back for another Star Wars movie. Coming in at number 5, we have Vader plan the fall of the Empire. In A New Hope, there are several scenes where Darth Vader and Princess Leia are face to face, and with Princess Leia being his daughter, and after the most recent movies it has been revealed that she has Force powers, Darth Vader would have been able to pick up on this, especially when Leia herself was unaware of her own powers, so she wouldn't be able to hide this from Vader. This has led to some fans believing that Vader knew all along who she was and who Luke was, and was helping them get closer together so they could one day tear down the Empire. Now, why does Vader cut off Luke's hand? Maybe it's just an old habit, but more likely the fact that Vader couldn't stop playing the part if he wanted to see the Empire fall. Coming in at number 4, we have the infamous Carrie Fisher coke nail. I mean, come on guys, it was the 80s. There was no rules back then, and cocaine was a brand new thing. But in The Empire Strikes Back, there was a moment where fans noticed something strange on Carrie Fisher's nicely manicured hands. One of her nails is way longer than the others. This made a bunch of people rush to the conclusion that Carrie Fisher had a visible coke nail in that movie. For those of you who don't know, a coke nail is when someone grows out a fingernail longer than the others so they can easily snort cocaine off of the nail. And here's the thing, Carrie Fisher has not been shy about her drug use. She has even said that Jim Belushi once told her that she should slow down on drugs. Jim Belushi, who is one of the most famous cokeheads of all time. She even admitted to using drugs on the set of Empire Strikes Back. Now, does this mean that that nail was indeed a coke nail? Well, we'll never know, but I wouldn't be surprised for a second. Coming in at number 3, we have the C-3PO Wiener. The myth of the disgruntled artist has brought us so much to work with, but apparently in the 80s, there was a Star Wars trading card artist that was upset with his bosses, so he decided to change the artwork on the C-3PO card, and he added a nice long metallic golden wiener. Now, the bigwigs at Star Wars have said that this is not true, and this is just a piece of the costume caught at a weird angle, but the idea of a robot dingle is so funny, and that is why it's on this list. Coming in at number 2, we have Who is Yoda? I mean, we know who Yoda is as a person and as a Jedi, but we know very little about his past and, more importantly, where he comes from. So far, there have only been 3 of Yoda's species ever seen on screen. There was, of course, Yoda, Yaddle from one of the prequel movies, and most recently, the cutest version of them all, Baby Yoda. But as to where this mysterious race of excellent Force users comes from, nobody knows. There are some speculations though. Some people think that the entire race of Yoda-type beings could have died off and Yaddle and Yoda were the last 2 remaining. Their species might have a deep connection to one another, and the 2 survivors were able to draw into the power from all of their dead species, and that's how they're able to become so powerful with the Force. There's also the theory that the aging and gestation period of the species is extremely long, and that is why we see so few of them. We know that a 50-year-old Yoda is still a baby, so maybe the pregnancy for one of these bad boys is like 10 years. Could you imagine how brutal it would be being pregnant for 10 years? But because of this, it would make the species extremely rare with so few being born. I mean, they do live for 900 years, so you would have a lot of time to have kids, but a possible genocide would make it very hard for the species to rebuild. Coming in at number 1, we have Jar Jar is a Sith Lord. This has to be one of the most convincing Star Wars urban legends, even though it sounds stupid at first. When you really break it down, it all starts to come together. Think about every time Jar Jar is in a combat situation, like in the battle at the end of episode 1. He manages to kill a bunch of droids with a blaster that is caught on his foot and even take out several tanks. Some people think this looks clumsy, but there have been a lot of connections between the way Jar Jar moves and the drunken master kung fu style. Also, think of all the people that Jar Jar influences. He is able to work his way into a high-ranking democratic position. He gets Palpatine elected, he convinces Jedis to take him on a mission, and he influences the entire Senate. This is all supposed to be chalked up to dumb luck, but how lucky can one guy be? And on top of all this, Palpatine and Jar Jar are from the same planet. Who knows how long these two have been working side by side? Honestly, we could do a whole video just on this topic, but alas, we have reached
In at number 10, we have Darth Vader's eyelashes. Now we see a severely burned Anakin Skywalker who is about to become Darth Vader lying on a medical table. Now all of his hair has been burnt off, even massive parts of his skin have been burnt off, but hello, his eyelashes are still looking luscious. Maybe this is just an aftermath of the dark side, like you can never have bad eyes. Great.
Next up at number 9 now we have Owen and Beru. Luke returning to his home on Tatooine to find that his uncle Owen and Aunt Beru have been killed is one of the most devastating and iconic scenes in Star Wars. Many people presumed that it was stormtroopers that carried out the murders. The thing is, that's generally just a presumption because the deaths don't actually appear on screen. Because of this, a vacuum has appeared for people to come up with their own theories. One of them is that Boba Fett, the bounty hunter, carried out the killings. People claim that the canon reveals that Boba Fett was on Tatooine at that time. He also had the means and opportunity to kill Owen and Beru. There's also the fact that Owen and Beru were presumably killed because they refused to give up information on Luke's whereabouts. Darth Vader himself once stated that only he can carry out interrogations that result in death. Therefore, stormtroopers would be forbidden from doing this, but not a bounty hunter. The next time we see Boba Fett, he's told by Vader to not disintegrate anyone. Many people feel this was a direct reference to him disintegrating Owen and Beru. What do you guys think? Coming in at number 8 now, we have Sith Lord Qui-Gon Jinn. This one might actually break a few hearts here. We all know Qui-Gon Jinn was the Jedi apprentice to Count Dooku before he turned to the dark side. Some people think that before Count Dooku turned, he tainted Qui-Gon with the same sort of dark seeds that led to his own fall from the light side. In the first episode of the prequels, Yoda senses fear and anger in Qui-Gon Jinn when the Jedi Council refuses to train Anakin. Now people say these are not Jedi-like traits. The traditional view of this is that Qui-Gon sees Anakin's potential for good and decides to train him himself. This theory claims though that Qui-Gon, now on the dark side, decided to train Anakin because he sees his potential for evil in the galaxy. That's kind of sad. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Darth Maul. The first time we meet Sith Lord Darth Maul is in the 1999 Star Wars movie The Phantom Menace. Some think that we actually see his face a lot sooner than that though. In the scene from A New Hope, where Luke tells Owen and Beru that the droids may have been stolen, we see a little bit of their homestead. Now most people watch the characters or listen to the conversation, but some people looked up. There, on the ceiling, is a pattern that looks a lot like Darth Maul's facial tattoos. Now, there are a number of theories going around about this. One of them is that it's just a similar looking pattern. People are reading way too much into it. On the other end of the scale though, some people think that it's Darth Maul's face pattern on their ceiling, and that means that Owen and Beru are in league with the Sith. Yeah. I know, it is a bit of a leap, but some people think it's true. They say that the Lars family were instructed to raise Luke and eventually bring him round to the dark side. It's a crazy theory and a little bit scary, so that's why it's on this list. Next up at number 6 now, we have Force Love. For some Star Wars fans, the love between Anakin and Padme never really looked like a match made in heaven. Why did Padme end up with a man that she knew when he was just a boy? Why did she seem to blindly abandon her own ideals for him? For example, when Anakin slays an entire village of sand people, men, women and children, Padme tells him that being angry is natural and also uses it as a chance to tell him that she loves him. Now that's a little bit strange for a woman who was a staunch pacifist when she was on the Senate. The theory is that she's not really in love with Anakin, he is manipulating her with the Force to make her love him. In the picnic scene, when Padme refers to herself as being weak-minded, he doesn't even contradict her. Is this because he agrees because he has had experience with manipulating her weak mind? He may even be doing all of this subconsciously. What do you guys think of this theory? Coming in at number 5 now, we have feral Ewoks. Most people find Ewoks cute. Yeah, sure, a little bit annoying, but cute. Look at them. They're George Lucas's excuse to bring teddy bears to life. Many people don't like them, but there they are. They help the rebels defeat the Empire on Endor using little more than ropes and arrows. That's all great, but they may also eat humans. Yeah, not so great. Why do people think this? Well, firstly, they almost served up Han and Luke as meals for the whole tribe. People tend to forget this detail because Leia arrived on the scene and saved them, but without that, two of the heroes would have actually been torn apart and eaten by Ewoks. At one point, we also see an Ewok using a pair of Stormtrooper helmets as drums. Some people think that those helmets are like the shells of a snail, which has recently been eaten, if you get what I mean. Think about it. Or don't. Next up at number 4 now, we have Vader's weakness. Over the course of the Star Wars saga, we learn just how truly powerful Darth Vader is. Some even argue the strongest Force user in all of history, and also not too bad with a lightsaber either. It did come as a bit of a surprise then that Luke, a kind of scrawny guy with a relatively recent training in the Force, was able to really give Vader a run for his money when they faced off at the end of Return of the Jedi. Why is this? Well, some people think it's all down to Leia. When the fight took place, Luke had recently learned that Leia was his sister. Vader must have also picked up on this, and the knowledge that he has a daughter must have shocked him to his core. Not only that, he must have realized in that moment that he had been responsible for torturing his own daughter and destroying her home planet. That could be enough to distract anyone when they're fighting their son in a battle to the death. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Emperor Rey. In Star Wars, it sometimes feels like everyone is related to everyone. Well, everyone except Rey. There's always been a lot of speculation about how Rey connects to the wider Star Wars family. One theory has emerged that she is related to Emperor Palpatine. Perhaps she's even his granddaughter. There are a number of things that fans of this theory point to as proof. Firstly, they say her fighting style is very similar to the way we see Emperor Palpatine fight in Revenge of the Sith. Rey also seems to struggle with being pulled to aspects of the dark side. She kind of loved telling Kylo Ren that he'll never be as great as Darth Vader. She also seemed to genuinely exhibit real flashes of anger throughout the whole saga. Next up at number 2 now, we have Han's Force. It seems like Han Solo is the opposite of the Force users in the movies. He doesn't really care for any of it. He mocks Luke and Obi-Wan for their hokey religion and has no need for a lightsaber with a blaster by his side. However, some people have put forward the theory that Han is actually extremely Force sensitive, and that he could even be a Jedi Master with training. If that sounds crazy, the support from this theory mainly revolves around Han's extreme luck. Now, if you look at Han's story throughout the movies, you can see he manages to survive some pretty impossible situations. His survival seems to defy all odds. Some say he's just lucky, others say this was subconscious channeling of the Force. That's why when he mocks Obi-Wan and his hokey religion, Obi-Wan just smiles because he senses the Force within Han Solo. I'm not too sure about this one though. I kinda like it. What do you guys think? And finally, number 1 now, we have Rey the villain. Some people, not many I'll admit, but some people think that Rey is actually the villain of the latest Star Wars movies. They say that there is always balance in the Force, and that if Kylo Ren is to flip to the good side by the end of the story, then Rey will be the one to flip to the dark side. They say we will find out she is the child or perhaps the grandchild of a Jedi such as Obi-Wan, and was left on a planet far away from the Empire's grasp. When she learns that she was abandoned because of a strange rule about Jedi having no children, she will be filled with rage and sent over the edge, possibly learning all of this from Luke, who had a similar experience but did not turn. As the icing on the cake, some have also pointed out Rey's accent. It's an English accent, and if you haven't noticed already, all the bad guys pretty much, except for Obi-Wan, have an English accent. John Boyega, who plays Finn, is also English in real life, but he was told to put on an American accent for the character. Not Rey though. Is this accent a sort of foreshadowing of events to come?